Hi, this is Erin from BLOSSYBTAS. Welcome to my channel. The plan for this video is to continue working with moulds that I purchased from TEMU, and you can check out the unboxing video by clicking on the link in the description box. In my last video, I made quite a few moulds using polyurethane resin from Solid Solutions, and it was an amazing experience. This video is all about SolidCrete, their eco casting medium. Whilst the polyurethane resin and eco casting powders are completely different products, they do have something in common, and that's how speedy they are. So polyurethane, we're looking at 15 to 45 minutes. The SolidCrete eco casting powder, you're looking at 30 minutes to demold and 2 hours for maximum strength. So very fast. Before I can start making any pieces, I need to go through and work out the volume of the moulds. I freely admit that over the time I've been working with eco casting powders, I've become reasonably good at estimating how much I need. However, I'm going to be trialing the Solid Solutions eco casting powder pigments today, and I want to make each of the pieces slightly different colours, so I do need to have an accurate amount that I'm working with. So I've got a Pyrex dish here to catch any spills. I've sat my scales in there. Then I put each of the moulds onto the scales, making sure it's on mils, not grams. Then I zero back, add in water until it's just sitting at the top, and then I write down that number. And then when I've finished and I have the number down there, I then just tip the water carefully out into a container I've got sitting next to me. And then the key to these measurements is you can use these if you are working with epoxy resin. But when you're working with an eco casting powder, at least in my experience with AR400, and I believe the SolidCrete that I'm about to use from Solid Solutions, you need to multiply that by 1.8 in order to get the correct amount that you need to work out. SolidCrete comes in a powder form, and then you mix that with tap water, and the ratio is 3 parts powder and 1 part water. And I'll show you in a moment how I work out that ratio for each of the moulds. So we've got a Highland Cow extravaganza today. I've got the Highland Cow planter and the 2 Highland Cows. And of course we've got that gorgeous woolly mammoth mould. Then we've got the teacup and saucer, which I've actually weighed separately just in case I need to make one, not the other. And then we've got the tree, not a leaf as I originally thought, a tree, and then the pig. Now, these are the cat trio, and I did measure that one twice because I felt like I'd made a mistake with the first one. And now we've got the little Seahorse mould. Then after that we've got the little bunny mould. And then I can't find the cat, by the way. If you're watching this and wondering, where is the cat? I'd like to know as well. Then I have the boat and then the elephant, and then this is the set of 4 little vases, and I decide to weigh these all together, but then I do them separately just in case I do ever want to make them as individual pieces rather than the set of 4. Once I have all the measurements safely written down, it's time to open something that I've been so excited about. This is the Solid Solutions Liquid Pigment Set, and they're designed specifically to colour Eco Casting Powder, and they're a very highly concentrated liquid pigment, and they come in a set of 12 and the bottles are 20 mils each. Now the colours can be blended with each other to make new colours, and I did not know this until I was just preparing to do the voiceover. They are also suitable for use in polyurethane. So, I have some more experimenting to do, which is very exciting. So I went through and just familiarised myself with each of the colours, and as I mentioned, my goal is to try and use all of the colours in this video just to get an idea. I'm not making swatches out of them, I'm just going to be trying to use them. In the order I made with Solid Solutions, where I ordered all of these things, I discovered that they also have very well priced stirring sticks, so large paddle pop sticks, and also lots of measuring cups and heavy duty stirrers, so I'm going to be using those as well. Now I'm going to show you how I actually work out what I need for each mould. So here I've got the cloud little vase, 35 mils, multiplied by 1.8, and that gives me 63. Now this is my technique. You have others you could follow. I then divide that by 4, and that gave me 15.75. And so then I round that up, and I've rounded that up to 16. So I know I need 16 grams of water and 16 times 3, which is 48 grams of the powder. Hope that makes sense. So the colour I've decided to use is blue. Now I'm going to use it both in a very pale way and also in a stronger marbled look. Now they all do come with this little cap over the top, which you just need to take off the first time you use it. The instructions say to give it a good shake before you use each colour, and so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to start measuring out the water. I'm aiming for 16 grams, but I end up with 17, and I'm not going to argue with that. Now I'm popping just 1 drop of this beautiful blue. Look at that colour, I'm loving it, into the water, and then I'm resetting the scales, and then I'm going to add in the 48 grams of powder. I'm going to carefully mix that in, make sure all the colours blended through the powder, and then pop it into the mould, and that amount worked out perfectly. For the next one, the little heart vase, I'm doing exactly the same. However, this time I'm putting 2 drops instead of 1. And then when I finish blending the liquid with the powder, I'm going to add in an additional 2 drops and only really roughly mix it. And this will give me a more marbled appearance. Okay, I'm going to do the same with the next 2. This time I'm going to be using the purple liquid pigment and giving it a shake, of course, and doing the same procedure. So the first one is the light coloured one that's just blended all together, and then the second one I'm going to be doubling that amount of pigment and adding in additional pigment. Because I'm doing the same method over and over, I'm only going to let you know when I'm doing something a little bit different. So I did the cute little boat in turquoise blue, and then I am doing something a little bit different with the Seahorse. So I'm going to be mixing up half in yellow, bright yellow, and half in bright pink. And then I'm just going to pour a little bit in on top of each other and just hoping for a really pretty blend. I do love pinks and yellows and oranges and yellows and those sort of bright colours. So that's our little Seahorse. And then the next one I'm going to do is the pig. And I'm going to do that in the bright pink on its own. So I'm going to make a little mixture up and then add in a little bit more pink to do some marbling and then pour it in. Because the little pig mould has got the detail of the little tail and the ears, I do make sure that I give all of those pieces a little squeeze and a bit of a jiggle, just to make sure that the SolidCrete is getting into all of those little nooks and crannies. And here we are. This is just less than an hour later, ready to demold. And this is beautiful. So this is the first time I've used the SolidCrete, and it's the first time I've used these liquid pigments from Solid Solutions as well, and loving it. It's going really well. So here are our two little vases. We've got the pale blue one and then the pale blue with marbling. And then we've got even though it was purple, it's come out as a lilac because I made it very light. So we've got the plain lilac one, and then we've got the purple with the marbling. Now it's time to demold the little boat, and this is the one I did in the turquoise, and I mixed the liquid pigment in and then added a little bit extra at the end just to give it that slightly marbled appearance, and it is gorgeous. It's very sort of old-fashioned looking to me, but still very crisp with the turquoise colour. So let's have a look at our blend of the bright yellow and bright pink in the little Seahorse. So this is just a little Seahorse on coral and things like that, just a little ornament, and I'm excited to see what he looks like. And he is so pretty, loving that blend of colours. Okay, let's have a look at the little pig. And this is going to be the first pig mould I've ever had, and I'm just so in love. He's gorgeous. I did have a teeny little bit of a couple of the pigments left over, which I have poured into some little shapes there. With my next batch, I'm going to start off making the gorgeous little Highland Cow planter, and for this one I'm using the brown pigment and I'm keeping it quite light. I want almost a caramelly colour in the end, I'm hoping. Next we have one of the little Highland Cow moulds, and this one I'm using a pale brown mixture and white and just alternating those into the mould. And the second one identical, just using the red orange pigment instead of the brown. For the woolly mammoth, I'm using a combination of brown and bright orange, both of which I've slightly marbled. And for this one, I didn't quite have enough, so I've popped in one of the pieces from the leftover resin from the earlier batch to try and help bulk out the volume. So you can quite easily do that with your eco casting materials, and this SolidCrete accepted that really well. And then I made up a teeny tiny little bit of extra to go in there. So there are always ways and means. For the little two-dimensional elephant, I chose to use black, and I've mixed that as a grey colour and then added in a little bit extra for some marbling. Then with the tree, I decided to try and get a little bit fancy. I probably shouldn't have. But I've mixed up a little batch of brown and I've poured that into the lower part of the mould, which is the bark of the tree. With the leftover brown and a tiny little batch of just plain white that I've mixed up, I pour into the first two of the triple cat mould, and I don't have enough again, and so the middle cat gets some little treats fed to it. And those treats are just little fragments of dried eco casting powder, the SolidCrete. You might notice I use quite a lot of paper cups, but this is how I recycle them. So when they're dry, I sort of scrunch them up at the bottom a little bit, and then all of the dried eco casting powder can come out, and then that can be used for terrazzo flakes or filler, and you virtually end up with a perfectly clean cup again, and you can just wipe around it. So yeah, there's always ways of using up any little pieces, and it's a good way of keeping this a really environmentally friendly way of crafting. Time to check out the bright orange colour, and oh my goodness, it is exactly as it says, very bright. So I mix this up, and then I realise I do need to darken this particular batch down considerably, so then I add in some brown and pour that in. So that's our last little cat of this trio. Now back to our little tree, and I've mixed up the green into a very, very pale mixture for this level. Now I know this is all going to blend together and muddy up and do all of those things, but I just thought it would be fun to try. So I've put this pale green into the second layer of the mould, and then I'm going to darken that mixture and finish pouring in. And so all I did was add in a few drops of the green and just given it a very slight swirl around. And as you can see, I've also added in a couple of little fragments of cured eco casting powder to bring this one up to the perfect level. This one I wasn't able to use my measurements because I was mixing up a bit of the brown for the... Oh, anyway, I think you know what I mean. Okay, time for our beautiful teacup and saucer set. So this one we're going to be using red, but only in a very light way, so more like a pink. So mixing this up, and I am going to do a little bit of marbling, and whenever I've got a two-piece mould, I always make sure I pour the lid or the base, and in this case it's the little saucer, and then the actual other item, so that they get a similar marbling. And as you can see, I didn't quite have enough here, but I've made sure that I've got the marbling I need around the rim of the cup. Less than an hour later, it is demolding time. So this first little oval mould is the leftover from the woolly mammoth, so the brown and that sort of orangey colour. And then I've got a pale pink, which is from, I think that could be from the Teacup. The next piece I'm going to demold is the triple pussycat set, and I'm not in love with it. I don't like the colours I chose, and I don't like the mould. I just don't feel like it's detailed enough. I think this is a mould that I will need to cast again and have another go at. I'm excited to see how this tree went, because I did do that, you know, the bark colour and then the paler and then the darker. So we'll see. And it's not bad. So there's a little bit of the brown has moved and gone on to the green, but that could be fixable. Here is our little elephant, and this is the one I did in the black. And look, I'm loving the mould, but I think I've made him look very sad. This is the teacup and saucer set, and I'm loving the saucer. That is so pretty. You wouldn't think that's red, but it's worked so beautifully with the SolidCrete and given me that sort of pink tinge that I really wanted. So let's have a look at the cup now. And oh, it is so pretty. As I mentioned in the unboxing video, I collect teacups and saucers and plates and little trios. And I love fine bone china. This is never going to be fine. It's chunky, but it's cute and chunky. And it's got a dear little heart on the front. And I think that has come out beautifully. I'm quite nervous about demolding the first of these Highland cows because there's so much detail built in, and I feel like it would be almost impossible to not have like a million bubbles. So far the SolidCrete is beautifully bubble free in I think all of the items I've done so far. Oh, I've knocked off, or not even made perhaps, just the end of his little horn. That is such a shame. But isn't he cute? I can fix the horn and I love him. Using an emery board, I'm just trying to smooth off the little broken piece of the horn and then just working on the other one to get it down to a similar appearance. So pretty easy. And because I've got two identical moulds, I'm wondering whether this next one is going to have the same issue. But look at that. Perfect horns. I love my two little Highland cows. Little A, maybe I should call him Angus, and B, maybe I should call him Bruce. Angus and Bruce, the Highland cows. Okay, time to have a look at the woolly mammoth. And again, a very, very detailed mould, but it's come out fairly well. So I just was pointing out there are a couple of little air bubbles on the little horns and a few over the body, but I'm just going to use the same emery board and try and smooth those down. And actually, the more I look, the more I find just where the hair detail is so fine. So I will have to keep working on that one. But overall, I'm very happy. I'm going to now demold the Highland Cow planter. and I really am hoping that this one looks okay. I'm so happy with the colouring of this one, and just want to see if I can get all the details in its little face and horns and all the hair. And look, is that just the happiest little Highland cow? Like, he's gorgeous. Similar to the woolly mammoth, there are some teeny little bubbles over his coat. And, oh, look at his face. He's happy. He's ready to have a little pot or something to carry in his back. He's there for us. And, oh, look, he's gorgeous. The more I look at him, the more in love I am. So I set them aside to reach their full strength, and then the next day I am going to be using the Solid Solutions Polyurethane Gloss Varnish to give them a protective seal coating. Now, they do also have a matte version of this, which I would much prefer to be using, but when I put in my order, it was sold out. So I will be keeping an eye out for that being restocked. So I'm just going all over, and I'm loving using a liquid on these. Can you imagine if you're using a wax? Sorry, I got the giggles because I love using waxes on eco casting powders. I really do. But unless it's a really smooth surface, you end up with wax caught in every little nook and cranny and have to go in afterwards and clean it up. Whereas here, I'm able to just apply it quite liberally with a brush and know that it's getting into everywhere I need it to get into. I did forget to say, when I was doing the sanding before, I highly recommend that you wear a mask. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same type of mask as you would wear when you're using epoxy resin or similar, but at least a particle dust mask, because whenever you're sanding any materials, there's a fine mist of particles comes off it, and you do not want to get those in your lungs. Now we are up to the woolly mammoth, and I'm not loving the colour, and I decide to try something. Ooh, a bit nervous about this, but I'm mixing some of this silvery grey pigment with the polyurethane gloss varnish, and I'm giving him a coat all over. I'm going for more of that traditional grey elephant colour, and I'm not too worried if little bits show through of the previous colour, because that will just add to it all. I'm actually really liking how this is looking, apart from the fact I wish it wasn't glossy, but as I mentioned, that's a user error because I've only got the gloss varnish, and would have used the matte just so that I can get that more of an elephant skin sort of a look. Next, I'm going to use opal white and the polyurethane varnish to make a mixture up that I'm going to use to highlight all of the little details on the little yacht. And I wanted to have a slightly vintage look, like the old canvas on boats. And so I'm going to blend it together really thoroughly, because you don't want any little lumps or bumps in this at all. And then I'm just going to use a little micro brush to carefully go along each of the lines, and I find straight away that even this teeny tiny little brush isn't fine enough, but I'm not too worried because any excess I can either wipe off or sand off, or a combination of both. And I think it's looking really pretty, and I'm loving, to me, what's turning into sort of a more kind of a vintage look for this. I don't normally like to work with moulds where I've got to add a lot of detail afterwards, but I must say I'm finding this quite relaxing, and just being able to pick up a piece I've created and hold it in my hand and add extra details, there's something really special about it. And this SolidCrete is so smooth, very cool to the touch, very much like a porcelain finish. Time to move on to the Pussycats, and I'm really not in love with these, so I decided to give them a little brush over, just with some of the leftover varnish that I had used for the woolly mammoth, and it's not going brilliantly, but I just don't know what else to do with these pieces. It's, you know what it's like when you make something and you're just not feeling it. But anyway, look, the big thing I've learned from this, and especially from the elephant, which I use that same mixture with, is that you can end up with a really metallic-y looking finish, almost like a burnished steel sort of a look. And I think that's really interesting, and that could very much come in handy in the future. Now, this is my one regret with the polyurethane gloss varnish. I did the pig. Now, this pig is so smooth and just rounded and gorgeous, and I would have been much better off using a wax on this, because the polyurethane gloss varnish, while it's brilliant on the really textured surfaces, on here afterwards when it dried, I could definitely feel and see little ridges, and it didn't show up as much when I was doing that sort of metallic-y grey look, but on this pink it did. So I'm still loving it, but when I make this pig again, and I will, using this SolidCrete, using the same colour and the same technique, because I think it's gorgeous, I'm going to use wax, and I think I will get a much sort of glossier, consistent appearance. I'm going to use the same clear varnish for this beautiful little seahorse, and on this one again it worked really well because this is quite a textured mould and lots of detail in there too. And this is another example of a made piece that I'd really struggle if I was using wax to finish it, because there are so many highly detailed pieces to this mould, and getting wax in and around and then buffing it off would be very, very difficult. So just loving having this very liquid polyurethane gloss varnish as an option. So with that little batch all done, I'm now going to look at the teacup and saucer. In my previous video, I had the most beautiful, overwhelming response to using water slide decals, which took me a little bit by surprise because I use them all the time. I don't really think anything of it. And it was intriguing to me that the video where I showed you using them inspired many of you. So I thought I'd show you through my water slide decal collection and tell you a little bit about how I choose them. So these are designed for nails, so fingernails. So a lot of amazing resin supplies come from the nail industry, and they are teeny tiny. You can get very large waterside decals, and you can also print your own. And I use and do both of those methods as well. But I do love these little nail ones for embellishing smaller pieces. So some of them are mono-coloured, so blacks and whites. Some of them are designed to give a full coverage to a nail, and then you buff the edges off. And then others just have these teeny tiny, super cute, like look at these little pussycats there. They have these tiny little images which are standalone images. Now you'll see I have singled out that little rose sheet to the left. That's because I'm weird and I like collecting these in sets of 2. So when I find waterside decals that I really like, I buy double the set, and that's so I can, oh, see there, I found its little friend, and that's so that I can have matching pieces if I'm doing earrings. So I do use these a lot for earrings, and if I've got 2 sheets of each, then I can use identical images on both. And so I've also pulled a couple out there because I think I'd like to use them for a project. I just like looking through them, and I pretty much always find something I can use. And when I've also got a little section, I don't think I show you that in here, where I keep all the little cut up pieces and just pieces that have only 1 sheet left, and because I use every single image, I never ever throw out any part of these if I can help it. And look at that. Oh, these are some of just the single sheets that I've got left, and you can just get the sweetest images. So these are the ones that I was considering for this teacup. That gorgeous little ladybird set there and the flowers. And I've chosen to go with the flowers, not because I don't love the ladybirds. I really want to use them for a project, but I think that this will give me the look I'm going for. A lot of the teacup trio sets that I collect have beautiful flowers around the edge of the saucer and on the inside of the teacup, sometimes on the outside as well, or both even. So what I'm doing is I'm trimming off all of the little black pieces. So there's usually a printed number on the sheet. I want to get rid of that. And I get rid of all of the little black registration marks around the corner. The reason I do that is because they will then, if they stay in, they'll float off into the water and it just gets a bit crazy. It's already going to be crazy with pieces floating around in it. And so the idea is that you remove the protective sheet and then you just plop them into the water, and then in around a minute you can give the sheet of paper a wiggle and the little waterside decals will come off, and then they're ready to apply. So I use tweezers to pick up the pieces, and then I usually end up putting the pad of my finger down on top of them as well, just to press them down. I've come up with a pattern that I want to follow. Now, probably 1 in every 10 or 12, you'll find you'll pop it down and then it'll either have bent over or something will happen. And so you do need to be prepared for mistakes and, redoing pieces. Sometimes you can just pop that piece back into the water and it will unfold and it can be used again. Other times they might tear, things like that. So once I'm happy with their position, I can then set it aside to dry, and I think it's looking really pretty. So I've done a sort of a pattern between flowers and leaves, and it is going on to unsealed SolidCrete Eco Casting Powder. And then when I've done the saucer, I'm ready to move on to the cup. And with the cup, I have noticed that there is this lovely little raised heart on the front, and I'd really like to put some special flowers on there to highlight that. And so I've got a couple of little pieces here that I'm pressing down, and then I'm just going to decorate the inside of the piece with a little pattern of flowers. This is quite a time-consuming process because you are working with teeny tiny little pieces, but as I mentioned in my previous video, I find it very relaxing. Now, this fairly ghastly orange and brown piece is left over from, I think, one of the Pussycats maybe, and I still want to see if I can turn it into something pretty. And the other pink pieces, I think the two solid ones could be from another pour, I'm not sure. I just grabbed these three, but I've decided I'm going to turn these four into fridge magnets, and I'm just using up all the leftover little pieces of the waterside decals. I don't want to waste any of them, and it always feels like I'm fishing for little decals that are swirling around in the water. So I'm really loving the way these are turning out. They just have a really beautiful, natural, botanical sort of delicate look to them, and could not be happier. So because they are water based, these are water slide decals, you do need to let everything dry out before you go ahead and do a top coat. And so I just set them to the side in the sun, and it doesn't take long at all, and then you're ready for the next step. And the next step in this instance is to turn my attention to the 4 little vases. So I'm going to use the polyurethane gloss varnish, and I'm going to pair that with the pigments that I use to make them to highlight the little hearts on each of them. So the first 3 have got a little heart-shaped depression in them, and the last one has a little raised heart. So I'm going to go through, mix it up, apply it, and hopefully that will just add a little bit of an extra detail to these pieces. Next, I'm going to have a look at the tree, and I'm going to mix some green into the varnish, and then to lighten it up, I'm going to add in a pale white colour just to try and tone it down a little bit. And then I'm going to apply that to the middle section, and then I'm also going to use a dusky pink to do the tree trunk, just to give it an illusion of branches over the top. This experience is definitely teaching me that this polyurethane gloss varnish can be used for so many different things. Like, I've tested the varnish afterwards, after doing that, and it really felt great. Like, it really does dry hard with a good resistance to, you know, damage and knocks and things like that. And that means I can use it to add all sorts of texture to items that I make. Remember on the teacup, I put the little flowers on the outside on the little raised heart. And so now I'm going to add a little bit of UV resin to this. I just want to very carefully have it on just the heart to seal in those little flowers, and also to make it more of a highlight and a feature. And so I've got my little torch there so I can give it a UV spot cure. And this is a great way to, I guess, kind of freeze that UV resin into place when you're working on other pieces as well, just until you have time to use your larger curing lamp. Although you can definitely use this little torch to cure to completion as well. The 4 little magnets to be are each going to get a coat of UV resin on top, and I'm just going to drag that to the edge using a toothpick and then cure those. That will both seal the SolidCrete, seal on the little decal and give it a really pretty gloss finish. After the tops are fully cured, I'm now going to just flip them over, and I'm going to now use the polyurethane gloss varnish to protect the backs of these pieces. I'm also going to make sure that I seal the teacup and saucer. So I've just poured a little bit of the polyurethane gloss varnish into the inside of the teacup, and I'm very carefully just going over and around, making sure I coat every part of it. I'm doing both the inside and the outside of the cup, but I am avoiding the little heart area where I used the UV resin, and then I'm going to do the saucer in exactly the same way. These take very little time to dry. I believe the gloss varnish is meant to be a couple of hours, but on such a small surface, it's a warm day, I'm finding that it's drying really in minutes. So I am leaving it though so that it can reach its full strength. And once I've done those, I'm going to now just put a coat onto the back of each of the pieces that will become magnets. I just want to make sure the back of those is also sealed. I'm going to also give each of the little vases a varnish all over, so that is front, back and all of the side edges, and just make sure that everything is fully sealed. The same with the little boat and of course the tree. Lots of the varnish is getting a really good workout for this one. And then I'm going to use E6000 glue to glue some heavy duty magnets onto the 4 pieces that I've decorated as magnets. My goodness, this turned into such an epic long video with so many pieces that I've made, but my goal at the beginning was to use the SolidCrete from Solid Solutions as an alternative for eco casting powders, and I am thrilled to bits with it. The fact that I was able to purchase it for half of the price of my normal eco casting powder was amazing, and to be honest, I just couldn't find any real difference in it at all. Same container, very beautiful white product, identical curing times, things like that. So very happy with that. Also thrilled with the liquid pigments that they have for colouring your eco casting powder, and now I know that you can use it for polyurethane resin as well. I'm a bit excited to try that out too. And of course the polyurethane varnish has been wonderful. I wouldn't use it for everything to seal. I think it's good to have a few different ways of finishing off and sealing items up your sleeves, but for the pieces that were heavily textured or where it was very preferable to use a liquid, it was great. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing in this experience. I'm so happy that I've discovered Solid Solutions. I am an affiliate with them, which means that I do earn a small commission on any items that are purchased after using my code BLOSSYB, but you also get an extra 10% off your purchases, and at the moment they've got an amazing Black Friday sale where things are up to half, actually I think some are even more than half price off, and your discount code BLOSSYB goes off the total. So it's worth using it, definitely. I am so impressed with these products. I'm really just so pleased to find a really economical alternative to some products that I've been using, and some really innovative new products, and then some what I consider to be really hugely outstanding products like the mica powders. Just brilliant. I'm excited to share some photos of the finished items with you. So these are the little pieces that I went over with that metallic silver and the polyurethane varnish, and they're looking great. And the same with the elephant actually. And then we've got the little vases. And if you watched my TEMU order, I got the most dreadful dried flowers, but guess what? I was able to rifle through the packet and find these little pieces which look perfect in the vase moulds. Then here we've got the gorgeous little seahorse and pig, and the beautiful little teacup saucer and the magnets, and lastly, oh, I love them, our Highland Cow collection. So the ones on the left and the right are just little ornaments, and the one in the middle is a planter. Super happy with all of this. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.